Good, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to already the last day of the Blockchain Community Days. We hope you've been enjoying the program so far. Few rules of housekeeping before we start. Please note this session is being recorded. The talk will be about 45 minutes with some time for questions at the end. You're more than welcome to share us your questions during the session though. Please use your name and avatar for easy identification. We will follow up on any unanswered questions after the session. Then, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the topic for the next hour, which has all to do with sourcing your all-stars team and getting the ball rolling over the go-to-market playfield towards that MVP call for that Web3 or NFT product. Let's switch to Vanessa Barameda, Business Development Manager at X3, a supplier of contract-based software development expertise based in the Philippines, with a view on what outsourcing can do for businesses in the blockchain and Web3 space. Vanessa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Ipam. Okay, so I'll start with first introducing myself, just for everyone to understand where I'm coming from. So my name is Vanessa. I've been in the software development sales industry for 15 years. I've been into blockchain project marketing for 4 years now, and in IT recruitment for 3 years. So a combination of all those backgrounds is actually very much related to my topic today. And I'm also a mom to a 5-year-old named George. So he says hi. Okay, so the topic of my talk is why hire when you can outsource. So I'm actually talking to more of startup founders. If you guys are watching me right now, this one is going to be very important to you. Okay. So you have a great Web3 idea and you manage to raise some funds. Okay. So what's next, right? So I bet you the first thing you'd probably be doing is I was about to say that you'd probably post a job post, something like this, and you'd promise the moon and the stars to possible hirees and to attract candidates, right? So something like this, you'd use keywords like bonuses, health insurances, allowances, competitive salary. So yeah, so it's something most founders are very excited to do, but you'll have to think about this part very seriously before you proceed. Okay, according to hire.com, an average blockchain developer salary ranges between $150,000 to $175,000 per year. Okay, so actually, guys, a team of 10 engineers, if you've hired them directly, you could easily burn $1 million in 6 months or even less on salaries and benefits alone. Did you know that, guys? So I know what you're thinking. Probably say, Vanessa, your math is a bit off. If it's $150,000 a year, cut that in half, multiply by 10, that's not $1 million in 6 months. But actually, you think about it, that's actually not the case. So think of an iceberg as the compensation package or the salary package that you offer your employees. So there's the divisible cost on top, of course, the negotiated amount. And there are hidden costs underneath that most founders don't actually know. Okay, so actually it's the bells and whistles that might catch you off guard. And these are the things that most founders are not aware of. These are the paid leaves, the health insurances, government mandated contributions, allowances of transportation communication, work equipment and internet allowances, software licenses, employee retention activities. So those Taco Tuesdays or Beer Fridays, those actually add up to the total cost. Of course, bonuses. Some of you go as wild as 1, 2, 3 month bonuses, right? Let's put one example, paid leaves, okay? Let's say Bernie over here is a senior developer. He makes around $625 a day. You offered him 15 days of paid vacation leave. He happens to like to go to Hawaii and spend 3 weeks there. okay, for paid leaves. Okay, so he does this, files for a vacation leave, he goes to Hawaii and stays there for 3 weeks. But you suddenly forgot that Bernie is actually working on a project that had a deliverable within the next 60 days. So is the entire team going to wait for Bernie to come back from Hawaii? Of course not, right? They'd probably hire a temp, such as Ella, for example, who'll probably be paid $625 per day, and she'll be on contract for 3 weeks. So founders, what does this mean? It means you didn't anticipate that Bernie's paid leave for 3 weeks actually will have to add up $9,000 again to pay for the temp who will take on his work. So those are some of the hidden costs you wouldn't have anticipated at the start. Next, health insurance. So according to the Kaiser Family Foundation 2020 Health Benefits Survey, an average annual premium for an employee family health insurance is around $21,000. And the employer, or again, the company who employs the direct hire, shoulders 73% of this, which is around almost $16,000. Okay, so again, that's one of the things you need to consider when hiring directly. Next, work equipment. Again, you forget this. A lot of people forget that when you hire someone, you have to provide work equipment. So this is a super conservative example. Laptops, for example, that cost $1,000. This is the most basic specs for an office worker. But if you're into special projects such as that use AI, for example, or you work on the Metaverse or AR, then you'll probably need more powerful equipment, and that ain't cheap, right? So for this example, for the benefit of this presentation, let's just say it's $1,200 for a laptop. It all adds up. Let's say $2,000 easily for work equipment. So the 3 examples I just showed you on the bells and whistles, let's try to add them up, okay? So the paid leaves is around $9,000. Health insurance is around $1,500 or almost $1,600. Work equipment and internet connection is about $2,000 per year, okay? Add that up, that's $27,000 on top of your negotiated salary. So what does this mean, guys? The negotiated salary is not actually what you're paying out. You actually have to add at least 30% of that as your fully loaded cost. So remember my question earlier, that why you'd probably burn $1 million in 6 months if you hire 10 blockchain developers immediately? That's because of the fully loaded cost. Okay. So let's say you did hire 10. Okay, so you have the runway, you have money, you hired 10 developers in 6 months, and you wanted to produce a minimum viable product in 6 months. So that's your roadmap. So your team is there, you're drawing up the sprint plan, you have deliverables per month. As you see here, they're like, it's coded per month. And yeah, they're very excited to start. Month 1, month 2, everything's right on track. Everything's perfect, running perfectly. But what you don't understand, guys, is if you work in software development, it's very common that something will change right in the middle of your sprint or in your product development plan. Why? Because plans change. Sometimes there are good ideas that come in late. You have to insert it into your product pipeline. And because of that, your original sprint plan will have to change as well. So your 6 months might not really be achievable. So the MVP, it's kind of, I've actually encountered this 100 times. The original deadline isn't always always hit, actually. So put at least a month or 2 leeway for delays, right? And again, as a founder, you probably didn't think of this. So 6 months later, your funds run out. There's still no MVP. What happens? Here's the worst part of it. You're left with no choice but to do more painful and more expensive layoffs. Why did I say more expensive? Because guys, when you let go of people, you have to prepare for severance pay and retrenchment compensation, which again costs money. So if you're bankrupt, you need more money to lay off people. So again, if you don't, that's going to give you a lot of trouble. So you'll have um, payables, unpaid suppliers, labor cases, especially for disgruntled employees who haven't been paid, legal issues with the government. And sadly, if this all piles up and you don't find the means to solve it, you might be forced to put your project into a screeching halt. And that's very painful, especially for a founder who is very excited to come up with your project, with your baby, right? What you should have done as a founder, the smartest thing to do, you should have spent those precious 6 months on functions that matter, such as fundraising, marketing, forging valuable partnerships for your project, networking, um, fixing your go-to-market strategy, your tokenomics, PR, networking that would introduce you to more valuable partners and potential investors. So this is actually where you should focus on, because this is your baby. You are the owner of your project. Nobody else is the best to represent your project but you. Okay. So remember that for the slide that I showed you on the iceberg slide. Actually, if you notice, the bells and whistles, the list that I showed you, all point to the middle part of the iceberg. What you don't see are the bigger chunk of the iceberg, which is actually wasted time of founders, which is very expensive. Why? Because nothing more expensive than a missed opportunity. So as founders, uh, if you didn't get to reach the right partners or forge the right partnerships, get more funding that's needed for the following iterations of your project, that's really the missed opportunity that I'll continue. So how do you choose an expert provider? Okay, so I don't want to use the word expert loosely, because in the industry that we are at right now, when you say expert, a lot of people kind of claim that they are experts, even if they're not. Like if they just mint one NFT, for example, they're suddenly NFT experts. So I don't want to use the word expert. Instead, let's just call it legit providers, right? So how do you choose a legit provider? So first, make sure it's a reputable or established provider in its own field. Let's, for example, you want to buy liquid detergent, right? You need to wash your clothes. You need to buy a detergent, but you have no idea on what brand to buy. You go to a supermarket. So what detergent are you going to buy? Are you going to buy from an obscure manufacturer, or are you going to choose a detergent manufactured by the likes of, let's say, Procter and Gamble or Unilever, right? So you're going to trust the product manufactured by those that's reputable or established in their own field. So same thing with choosing an outsourcing provider. Next is management. Okay, for example, you're in business with someone with a startup, for example. Of course, obviously, a startup is not as reputable yet or established in its own field, because obviously it's a startup. But the management behind it is actually comes from 20 years experience, for example, in the chosen field. That actually is credibility in itself. The background of the key management. Okay, next, employee base size. So this isn't always the case, but normally if you find a company that has like 20, 50 people employed, most likely it's not going to run away and close shop tomorrow. So that's an indication that it's kind of legit, right? Next, affiliation or certification with industry principles. So for example, you haven't heard of the company, you don't know the founders, but oh yeah, he's a member or endorsed by a university, for example. So that kind of lends its credibility to the company itself, because it's endorsed by a reputable or an affiliated with a reputable university. Next, track record or portfolio. At the very least, ask for a portfolio of past work from the company that you plan to engage in. Why? Because the projects that he or she or the company that you're planning to tap, the projects that they've probably done in the past is an indication of what their capabilities are. So this is quite important. Thomas, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
Next, thorough in approach or documentation. So if you're meeting with someone and then they would answer you with, yeah, we can do everything that you just told us. Yeah, we'll deliver it by next week. And then you don't see any documentation, or there's no like, you don't sign anything. That's red flags there. An established company or a reputable company will be very thorough when it comes to documentation. Because, you know, I mean, if you outsource work and we turn over the work back to you, you have to make sure everything's covered, everything's documented. There are logs, there are manuals, written manuals that the company can go back to ensure that there's business continuity after the turnover, right? Responsive and customer centric. SLAs are very important in software development, guys. I mean, deadlines are very important. So if a company that you're talking to does not respect SLAs, does not respect responsiveness, that's a red flag again. So if you suddenly the AE or unless maybe the account executive is sick, right? But if suddenly you can't talk to the same person again for like several days, then that's a red flag there. Maybe that's not the right provider for you. And lastly, of course, this is the safest part. It's recommended by someone you know. So if maybe a startup friend of yours you've met in a conference recommends a project because or a provider because he or she worked on the project that your friend did, then yeah, of course, that's one of the signs that it's a legit provider. Okay, so shameless plug, because I'm very proud that my company actually ticks most of the boxes of the guidelines or the examples that I showed you earlier. So Surpass is actually been in the software development industry for 20 years. So we're kind of established. 20 years of doing this is science to us. All the custom development work to us is science. Everything's documented, everything's laid out and planned for properly. We're a publicly listed company. We were actually the first in Southeast Asia to publicly list back in 2014. Picture you see here is actually the day when we IPO'd. We have 200 employees in Manila, 100 of which are software developers. So that's why it's easy for us to come up with a team all of a sudden to work on your project, or maybe lend you 1 or 2 developers if you need it. We've delivered hundreds and hundreds of B2B and B2C projects throughout the decades. So yeah, we've done this many, many times. It's a science to us. And we've launched over 40 mobile casual games. Yeah, back in 2013, 2014, we used to be one of the biggest mobile casual games developers in the region. So yeah, during the IPO, as you see in the picture, this was also the day we launched one of our mobile games, Run Run Super 5. That's why they're like robots or Power Rangers posing beside the founders there. And we've been doing blockchain projects since 2018. So we've been doing this. We've handled a lot of startup projects as well as those that are already established in the industry. So we don't actually discriminate on the project size. We do both MVP or minimum viable product, or maybe a module of a big platform. Okay, so the last part of my presentation is the benefits of outsourcing. Okay, so this is kind of what to summarize in your head why outsourcing might be the right solution for you. Okay, one is you only pay for worked days. Yep. So if you hire that a developer like Bernie, for example, and he goes on vacation for 15 days, you have to pay for him because it's part of his contract. Whereas if I provide you a developer and he doesn't show up tomorrow, I'm not going to charge you a single dollar because he didn't work, right? I will only charge you for work days. Next, you don't need to handle all HR related stuff like payroll, health insurance, payments, nothing. So it's all part of the service that's provided to you by an outsourcing company. Equipment is normally provided by companies, unless of course there are special or powerful computers that are required to do the work. Then yeah, most likely you'll have to provide it. But most of the outsourcing companies right now, they provide the basic equipment. Dedicated single POC, that's very basic for any service company. They should always assign one single point of contact, or like maybe an account person assigned to you for all your concerns. And this one, I'm not quite sure if all outsourcing providers can offer this, but I can only speak for my company. My company being a software development company for 20 years, we have senior consultants who've been with us for many, many years. And we don't just monitor our employee performance, we also provide support. So that's an added value to your project, because we've been doing blockchain projects for years now. And if you're a startup, we can actually give inputs. Like if you explain to us what the project is about, and we could give suggestions based on our experience and based on what's the industry practice. So if you're not happy with the work, you can always demand a replacement. So that's like a guarantee for performance. Okay, and best of all, there's no strings attached, no legal headache. After the contract ends, if for as short as 3 months, for example, if it ends, you have no worries letting go of the person that you outsourced. That person will just simply go back to our pool of resources and ready to be deployed to another project or assigned to another project. Okay, so I hope this presentation gives you some insights onto on outsourcing. I hope it makes you think if this is the right service for you. If it is, well, please contact me. Here are my details. You can email me at van@surpass.com or telegram me. This is my Telegram ID. So that's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Right. So I'm ready for your questions.
I've checked the chat. There's currently no questions I'm seeing in the chat.
All right. Sorry about the being cut several times during the presentation. So
yeah, but that shouldn't matter. You got back. You got back in the session very quickly. We spoke before the session about the business activities you're involved in, and during the session you also indicated that Xerpass is both in, call it, say, traditional IT projects, for instance, like e-commerce, and say recently moving into the digital ledger technology Web3 space.
Web3, yeah.
So do you see any differences in the way projects are being done, maybe methods and procedures, the dynamics is? Could you elaborate
the difference?
A bit
Yeah.
that?
Well, basically we treat the same project almost the same.
So the audience, why I asked the question is because hi, Vanessa.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I was saying, yeah, it's we treat every project the same. So the technology changed, obviously. So for Web2 projects, there's the traditional front end and back end technology stack. But for Web3, we have, of course, smart contract developers that either use Solidity or Rust technology, for example. It's very unique to Web3. But Web3 also uses the traditional technologies like React, JS, JavaScript. It's still pretty much a Web 2 plus a little bit more technology stack involved. But the process is still the same. Basically, we still plan the sprints. It's still a 2-week long per sprint, and then of course depends on the scope of work how many sprints is required. But again, since we've been doing this over and over, it's a science to us. There's a process that works. The service delivery process works already from Web 2. We simply transport it to Web 3.
Yeah. So it is to you to Xerpas. It's basically not any different. Is it? Does it require apart from specific hard skills? Does it require other soft skills with the people? Because I can imagine that if you're dealing with, say, startups, that there's a lot of other dynamics.
Right.
There may be other, say, risks involved in if you compare it with maybe developing a traditional digital or even physical product.
Right.
Does it require different skills from the people involved?
Soft skills. Okay, so for
soft skills. Yeah, but
for the technology stuff.
The
hard skills. For the soft skill, well, basically it's still the same. More like maybe adjusting to the time zones, because Web3 is very much a global community compared to the traditional clients that we deal with, which is normally within the region. So many of our developers work on shifts. It's not even a soft skill actually. In terms of communicating, yeah, there are cultural differences. Since obviously when you've been into traditional software developer and you've been talking to the same of course we're Filipinos, we know how to deal with Filipinos, but Web3 opening it up globally, suddenly you're talking to someone from Europe, from the US. We have a client from New York, and later on he's in Greece. So it's quite different. I don't think it's even bad. It's actually very exciting for most of our people being exposed globally all of a sudden. So so it's something that kind of excites them. So actually, a lot of our developers are very excited when they start working on Web3, because they can do both. Actually, our developers can do both. Of course, if there's no demand for Web3, they go back to Web2 projects. We still do Web2 projects until now. But when they do Web3, they're very excited because they know they're going to learn something new and they're going to be exposed globally once again. So it's something that our developers look forward to.
And having said what you said about, we also of course do Web2. Do you actually see that with clients you're doing Web2 projects for, that there's a demand, there's an interest to understand or maybe experience Web3 projects? Do you also see that, or is it basically, would that be new business? Would it be a completely different client segment, or is it also the existing clients that you're doing Web2 projects for that are now asking for Web3 projects?
There are some. Obviously, the more traditional companies are very wary of getting into Web3, especially if there's no need for them to get into Web3. But we do have clients who have actually been inquiring about blockchain technology and how it can help their business. So with that part, we offer consultancy as well, because we will tell them if we think that it's going to be a beneficial solution to their problem, or will it just complicate things for them. So yeah, it's to answer your question, there are some clients who are interested, but most of the traditional enterprises that we do Web2 work for are still kind of conservative until now. So so right now there's a thin line in the middle where there's a crossover, but yeah, mostly it's separate. Web3 has always been startups who enter in a Web3 mindset already, versus big traditional companies doing Web 2 are still kind of stuck in Web 2 until now.
Yeah. No, so on the EPAM side, as far as I can see, we also see that we do see big corporates that are interested in the space.
Yeah.
That there is this fair basis of not wanting to miss out on some development. So if your competitor is doing it,
Right.
you also want to do that, or at least have tried it to
Right.
maybe to build up some experience. But it is indeed usually new companies entering the market with a very kind of bespoke maybe a business proposition.
Right.
Yeah. No, interesting indeed. I checked the chat. There is still no questions from other people in the audience. Yeah, maybe an odd question from my side. So, what would you, as someone from another company, ask the people from EPAM, a company like EPAM? It's maybe not an odd question. We are,
Okay.
of course, also an IT provider. But
right.
Would you have a specific question for us to think about? Okay, you're also involved in the space. We are also doing, say, projects, products, some staff augmentation.
So you
Do you
provide
have a recommendation for us?
So you also into staff augmentation?
Yeah, usually projects, but okay. So sometimes it starts at staff augmentation, and then yeah.
Yeah. So which markets are you guys strongest in EPAM?
It's also say digital engagement, financial services. Actually, all the known the known verticals.
Right. I mean, which countries are you servicing most?
Also globally.
Globally
it's,
as well. Yeah. There's no more boundaries. Actually, you're right.
No, there's actually no boundaries. No, so it's but do you have maybe some recommendation on, okay, you should not forget about this when you engage in this space? So maybe some personal experience you had, or
right. So I guess for the staff augmentation side, actually, so the communication is key. So especially if your people are working remotely, it's important that someone else from your team also knows what's going on with the resource that you have deployed, so that if in case the client has something to say or isn't actually saying clearly to the resource that you provided, at least like a single POC. For example, in my case, I'm usually the single point of contact for a client. And although I'm not a developer, so I don't really know exactly the tasks that are being assigned, I kind of get feedback from my client constantly on whether the resource is doing okay. So it's more of like a health check to know, like, whether is it something that works for them, or maybe you should replace your resource. So that's very important, especially for the client. They'll surely appreciate that, because checking in on them and making sure that the quality of the quality of work being provided to them is of standard, of course. And it's something that most resource outsource companies forget. So they think that they just throw in a person to you and I'll bill you next month, see ya, bye. So that shouldn't be the case. You should always have a direct line with your client and ensure that your client is happy with the performance.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. So that's especially with anything new, there's this vast effort to be put in expectation management.
Yes.
And founders, you share with us, okay, you want to actually help out founders, and founders are you're helping them out for basically freeing up their time so they can do
Yes.
the expectation management to the outside world. And as an IT services provider, you have to do that to the founder, and there should be a match there.
And when
that.
When you're talking to a founder, you should also see him not as, you know, like cash bill. You should see your client as a partner. So actually, if there is something that you could contribute to the benefit of the project itself, being someone from the outside, that it's best to tell your partner what you think, and, you know, make suggestions, so, you know, you could help him, because, you know, our clients also, when they outsource, you know, it's more of like they're seeking help, right? They're seeking help from expert providers. So, you know, giving in your input about the project is
No, I see that as well. I always say when I go to a client, actually you can bring him or her any tool, any solution, but the best tool is a mirror. So help them then see what they are, how they are behaving, if they actually saw things the right way, things like that. Yeah.
Right.
No, I fully agree with that. Checking the chat one more last time. There is no additional questions. So I think if it's all right with you, Vanessa, we can close this session.
Right. Okay.
I want to thank you, and of course the audience for their being with us, and you, Vanessa, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Thomas.
No problem. Well, it was a pleasure. And if there's any other questions in the chat, you can ask them in the chat. Right. And we will follow up with you, and then link them back to you, Vanessa.
Yes. And yeah, you have my email address, guys. I showed it in the slide earlier. If you have any inquiry, please feel free to email me.
Thank you. Audience, thank you for your joining, and see you in the next session. Bye-bye.
Bye.